Welcome to tonight's Dharma talk. And in this Dharma talk, I'd like to clarify a little bit about the eighth fetter. The eighth fetter is called mana in Pali, and it refers to the conceit I am, or this function of self-conceiving. Now, there are 10 fetters, and these fetters are various, well, there are four of the fetters are the hindrances, which include paralyzing doubt, obsessive sensual desire, ill will, and restlessness. And the other fetters, and when I say fetter, it's something that holds us back from enlightenment, something that holds us back from waking up to the way things are. The other fetters relate to psychological patterns and behaviours and perspectives that hold us back, and these include the belief that our personality is what we are. It's called personality view. The thought that rites and rituals or conventions can awaken us, whereas only insight wakens us in reality. And ignorance is another perspective that's a barrier, it's a fetter. It's actually the last fetter to go. And another fetter is called mana, this conceit I am. So what is it, this conceit I am? It's, as I mentioned 2 weeks ago, mana literally refers to measure. In Pali, it translates as to measure. And what we tend to do is measure ourselves against others, or we measure ourselves against ourself, or a construction of ourself, our self-concept of times previously or times in the future. And so we're either better, worse, or the same, which is, it's this construction of a self. Mana is really like a self-concept. It's a story that we have about ourselves, and then we hold on to this story and we identify with it. And the way we construct it is by comparing to other things, to other people, to other beings. So it's a bit of a problem. It's a real fetter. It's sometimes I call it the ego. It's this constructed self that we carry around, and it's like we construct this past where this self has come through like this, and we construct a future where we will go like this. But it's all, in fact, just a construction, just a concept, a conceptualization. So there's a book I read. I was actually listening to it as an audiobook when I was driving to Uluru and back, and it's called No Self, No Problem: How Neuroscience is Catching Up with Buddhism. And it was really a great book because it just clarified how in neuroscience they're realizing that this, what we call ourselves, this construction of a self, that I am this, or this is me, is in fact a fiction. That's what they're calling it. They're calling it a fiction. And they say it comes from left hemispheric language centers. And the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere are different. The left hemisphere is more about, the right hemisphere is seeing patterns and seeing the big picture and seeing sort of a bigger picture of things. But the left hemisphere is more about how we make sense of things, and it's quite logical and linear. So there's this left hemispheric dominance, and also our language centers, which give us words, like we're thinking this, I am this, and I am that, and so on and so forth. That part of the brain mixed with something called default mode networking. Default mode networking is this network of neural pathways related to different functions of the brain, usually around the top of the head. Well, not usually, it is around the top of the head, central top. And default mode networking was essential for us to evolve and survive. And default mode networking does things like slip us into autopilot. It also has created something called negative bias, which is has an evolutionary function. It would have meant that we would have a tendency to see the worst possible case scenario of anything, see the danger in things in order for us to survive. So it has a positive function. Another function of default mode networking is working out where we are in our social worlds, which is really interesting because, say, 40,000 years ago or 20,000 years ago in our village life, our village of 100 people, it was really important to know where we stood in terms of our relationships to others, because if we were rejected from the tribe, we would die. We wouldn't survive. So it was really important for us to work out, where am I in this social realm? Where am I in this village? What's my status here? And I wonder if this person likes me, or should I be better than that person, or maybe I'm inferior to that person. So default mode networking is this process of us working out where we are in the social world. Now, coming to modernity, default mode networking is related to increased anxiety and depression. It's also related to getting caught up in stories and thinking a lot. And as I was saying before, it's a bit of a problem. It's the ego. It's where we make our ego. And it's this mental construct. In reality, all there is right now. And what we tend to do is we meet someone and they say, oh, I'm a psychologist, or I'm a granddad, or so on. And we've constructed this story. Like, I was born in 1956 and I've done this and done that, and I've been here and done that, and I've got 7 grandchildren and 3 children and so on and so forth. This story about Malcolm, and it's just a story. The trouble is we cling to these stories as real, as solid, as lasting, as who and what we are. And that's a problem. It's a fetter. It blocks us from seeing the reality of things. Now, of course, I rang my number 6 grandchild this morning. She was 4 years old and I sang her happy birthday. So I take on roles of different beings because they have a practical function. So, I was being granddad and I was singing happy birthday to my grandchild, which is, I felt it was the best thing I could do. And, demonstrating my love for her. And it would be a bit funny to say to her, well, I'm just a fantasy, I'm just a fiction, I'm not really existent in this respect. Because we need to have roles and functions. We need to have some sort of ego to move through life and function as human beings. If, however, I started comparing myself to other granddads, thinking, maybe I'm better than that granddad, or maybe I'm worse than that granddad, or that granddad looks sort of similar to me. And I also started to comparing myself to a granddad that I was 2 years ago, or to a granddad I could be. You can see how I'm constructing this story about being a granddad, and I'm making this story and fantasy of a granddad to be real. Whereas in fact, it's not. It's just a story. So how do we work with this? I hope you can see how this story is quite a burden. It's like we carry around the burdens of these stories. Like when I was saying before, people with this function of default mode networking may have had survival value, many years ago, but seeing the worst possible case scenarios or seeing the worst of ourselves in current times, is a cause of great depression, anxiety, and so on. So we believe these little stories we have about ourselves, like I'm a failure, I'm no good, I'm useless, or whatever it is. And the more we believe them and identify with them, the more problematic they are. So it's not about, so in order to awaken, in my view, in my opinion, according to the teachings of the Buddha, it's about being able to see clearly what these stories are as stories and not being lost and confused with them. I think the Buddha, one time the Buddha was challenged. I can't remember what sutta it was, and I can't remember the complete circumstances. He was challenged by some Brahmins. They were saying, why are you talking about I and me and all the rest of it when there's nobody here, you have the teachings of not self. And the Buddha replied something along the lines of, well, I use these for social convention. I use these names for social convention, but I'm not confused by them. I know what they are. I know what is present. So when we can see clearly through this fiction of this self-creation, it's incredibly liberating because we're no longer clinging to the burden of the ego and we're just functioning in the present, completely here now, aligned with the way things actually are, rather than our stories of the way things are. So, yeah, it's the 8th fetter. And these fetters, I mean, I don't know how, I think this is relatively true. I mean, the Buddha says it's something like this. I look like the suttas have collected these understandings of the Dharma like this. The various fetters, overcoming the various fetters, are indicative of coming to different stages of awakening. So overcoming paralyzing doubt, personality view, and the belief in rites and rituals leading us to awakening. One overcomes that, one reaches the first stage of awakening called the stream entry. The second stage of awakening called once returner, where those three they're overcome, those three fetters are overcome, plus obsessive sensual desire and ill will is greatly reduced. The third stage of awakening, one overcomes all those previous fetters and completely overcomes obsessive sensual desire and ill will. So that's the third stage. And the fourth stage, the fourth and final stage, one overcomes all the others, of course, but also 5 remaining fetters. And these fetters are attachment to the pleasure, or the attachment to the material realms, the highly refined material realms. The next one is attachment to the highly refined immaterial realms. The 8th one is overcoming the conceit I am, seeing clearly through it, seeing clearly what it is, and no longer identifying with it. The 9th one is overcoming the hindrance of restlessness completely. And the 10th one is overcoming or abandoning or waking up to ignorance, which is then seeing things as they actually are, the reality of things here as they are. Okay, so thank you very much for listening, and I hope maybe you've wakened up with this Dharma talk. I hope so. It'd be lovely.